Very good afternoon to all of you. Um, we've got an esteemed panel out here, and just before I give you the structure, a perspective. We were talking gigabytes, and I think now is the age of exabytes, as they say, and I believe 1 exabyte is 100 billion gigabytes. Before we set our discussions, the perspective the panel really wanted to get was that whether you're sitting on gigabytes or you're sitting on exabytes, most companies are all actually sitting on massive amount of data. And big data does not necessarily mean gigabytes and gigabytes of data. We're all sitting on massive amounts of data, and there are smart decisions we can make if we look at this data in certain perspectives, and that's what various people are really going to talk about. How do we aggregate data coming from different sources? Today, it's not only websites or portals, but it's mobile, it's blogs, it's social media. How do we get all this data, make sense of it, look at it? What are the length and breadth of tools available, first party, third party? And for marketers, how can we actually use this data from a marketing perspective, from a product perspective, and make more smarter decisions that hopefully will help us gain better ROIs for the functions that we do. Before I open it out to the panel, I think what would be interesting to know is that by a show of hands, can we know how many people actually represent their own companies, as in not agencies but client companies, and are in the marketing or product functions? Okay, and can I assume that the rest are actually all from agencies, or can we do a show of hands of people who are representing agencies? Okay. People in product or product functions or business functions? Just so that the topics that we talk and the way that we present our thoughts, this is just to kind of make it more aligned to the audiences that we have, therefore this question. So what we will do is, we will each of the panelists will spend about 5 to 6 minutes giving a perspective on, their perspective on certain topics. And then we'll kind of debate and discuss on a few topics, and then open it to the audiences. So without taking more time, I'm going to start and hand over the discussions and the panel to John. We're happy to have John, and a very warm welcome to you, John. John has a lot of experience and is handling the entire IBM portfolio in all the growing markets. What he's really going to cover is the whole macro perspective of how to aggregate and look at data from various aspects, and his experience in doing so. So without much ado, over to John.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. As we were just talking beforehand, that if you went to this session year after year after year, you could name it the same thing, but the content would be entirely different. So data and the volume of data has been with us a long time, but the opportunities that are now being faced in front of us are new and changing. In that respect, what is happening for us today is we're faced with a couple of very fundamental questions, I would say. What data are we going to deal with? What data? What does it mean, this what data, more and more of it? And then secondly, what capabilities do we want to bring to leverage opportunity or service from that data to the what end of outcomes? The idea that we have, volumes of structured and unstructured data is not new. It's with us for centuries, in fact. But what is changing is our ability to adapt and instrument and collect that data. So I want to talk a little bit about a few aspects of what that brings to us. It brings to us, I think, obviously areas where we can drive insight, and that is a very, very clear job of work for everybody that put their hand up here. So what types of insights can we bring from the volume of data that's now available? But secondly, because the volume is increasing dramatically, the velocity at which the data is coming at us, the variety of sources of data, and honestly the veracity, you know, what's the level of confidence you can have in data, is also forcing us, you know, marketers and business people to think very differently about how we collect, collate, structure, and validate what we're looking at. And a new imperative for us in the sense of our community is here, you know, how we think and structure our data systems and our analytic systems. It is not the same as it was yesterday, and it will not be the same tomorrow as it is today. But I'll just talk a little bit about some ideas about that. And then thirdly, you know, very practically, as we're moving into this world, there's a cost and expense aspect of all of this. So the idea that you could, you know, live, you know, depending on where you sit in the room, you know, predictable media, predictable data sources, it's customer transactions, I know it's cost. Well, you know, the cost and expense of that, from all types of aspects, capturing, storing, managing, analyzing, etc., will also, if you're not very careful and designed, you know, accelerate exponentially over time. So as we kind of then think beyond that, I'll introduce to you to these 4 V's again: volume, velocity, for the speed at which everything's coming at us, the variety of sources, structured, unstructured, and what's changing about that, and the veracity of what the data is. And I would suggest that there's, you know, different ways of taking action thereafter, you know, if you kind of imagine this world. There's a way of thinking about it, about our place here in terms of, well, in this world of data, regardless of your enterprise, business, or service, how does that help you inform what is your next action? What is your next action? And this is very, very classic in a sense. We've been doing predictive analytics, we've been doing cross-sell, we've been doing lots of things like that for a very, very long time. So the first thing you gotta incorporate here is, you know, what aspects of your data sets you're now going to bring to bear. And the panel here will talk a little bit about both internal and external perspectives of that. But interestingly, I would suggest to us today is, as capabilities evolve, our ability to take contextual data or behavioral data and use essentially capabilities and techniques and technologies to apply what I would call cognitive knowledge to that type of data. So the 2 types of things, and I'll just use some examples here, you know, in a context of, you know, personal world. So I'm going to take some health examples. So if we think about the width of sourcing of data on a very structured level, today we are able to see that with instrumentation, not just nursing data, which was previously written on scripts and kept in files and put in drawers or held at the ends of the beds, can now be captured and digitized and made available. But not just at the level of a nursing or a medical service, but also at a level of as a personal level. Now a patient can capture data and use technologies and services to make that available immediately to medical services. Secondly, you can also think about this in perspectives of, you know, what I would call cognitive systems. And some of you may be aware of technologies like Watson, which is basically a cognitive learning technology where you bring and apply, you know, behavioral data and other non-structured data sources, and you're really applying new technologies to make sense of that. That dramatically increases, in my example here of medical services, it dramatically increases the effectiveness at which medical professions can bring diagnosis, both preemptive and situational diagnosis medication to bear. So all of this type of data management is driving to us a different set of capabilities that we need to bring, be you in this room in a client dimension or an agency dimension. And those capabilities are redefining what we need to be able to do in the future on an analytic level, on the basis of what the analysis is telling us what we need to do in our client service, in our client experience, what it means for us in terms of segmentations. So, the 101 of marketing in the past was segmentation. Well, the segmentation of the future is personal. It's one. It's many ones. Because with all of the data that's available, individuals, be they as consumers or businesses, will be expected to be treated as such. So all of these things are redefining both how we capture and treat data, the variety of sources, the capabilities that we need to evolve around that. So what data and what capabilities? And then you'll be able to drive to the types of outcomes that you're looking for, the relative of your business. So with that, I think we were going to explore a little bit about some of those data aspects.
Thanks, John. Thanks. We'll now move on to you, Chetan. And Chetan is the co-founder for Vizuri, and they obviously are seeing millions and millions of data points every month globally. So it's not only India, and I'm sure you have very interesting segments and behavioral aspects that you see. I think it'll be interesting for you to share with us how and how do you kind of analyze this data and look at it, and that perspective I think will be very enriching for all of us. Yeah.
Sure. So just before getting into how we do it, just a quick introduction about what do we do. We call ourselves a digital CRM company. So if you kind of look at the evolution of CRM 10 to 15 years back, let's just take an example. A user would walk into a Ford showroom, and then he would check about various car models available there. And then that data would get captured in the CRM that Ford dealership would have. So this would be about you, your annual income, family size, current income, current car that you own, the neighborhood where you stay, and all that. And then the user would walk out. Now this data would essentially be used by Ford and that dealership to strike a one-to-one conversation. So the point that John made, with the whole intent of essentially moving the user from a warm lead to a hot lead to a customer to a repeat customer, and then the whole life cycle around it. So this used to happen in the offline world, and we are a company at Vizuri. We try to replicate this in the online world, in the digital world, through our proprietary platform. So we help companies manage their first-party data and use it in powering their marketing conversations in a one-to-one way. And the end metric that the marketer cares for and we care for is the lifetime value of the user. So that's who we are. So with that background, quickly just going back to Sumit's question. So just to give you an order of sense of the size of data that we kind of manage, we see about 150 to 200 million unique users globally through our platform, and this is a proprietary platform. We I think churn through a few hundred gigabytes of data every day through our platform. We I think have about 250 plus servers, combination of cloud and dedicated, spread out globally. So that's the sort of order of magnitude that we deal with. Now with that context, just trying to kind of talk about what do we see specifically on the marketing side that is evolving as far as big data is concerned. One big key trend that we see is from a capability standpoint, just carrying on from John's point, we see that marketers, while the earlier focus was understanding consumer behavior, that continues, but then there are two other bullets that we see under a marketer's head now, and that they are data and technology. And so the question is, how do they use their marketing data and technology skills to be able to create value as the marketing function? So if I were to just take that point ahead, we kind of deploy a certain set of tools on our side, and with a few hundred advertisers that we work with globally, we see some of this happening on their side as well. So let me just give some specific examples here. The first part is about data visualization. So this is about when you are a marketer, you have a ton of data. Now, what are the big data tools available out there for you to be able to visualize the data? So let's say how many people came versus how many people bought for this product in the last 30 days from this source and with this ROI, right? So let's say that's your question. Now, how do you slice this with the data that you have and present it? And we've been using a tool called Saiku. It's an open source tool that has been very, very effective in helping us map this out internally and also for our clients. So that's sort of one example. The second one is about, I mean, with the whole big data happening, the underlying trend is that data has moved from SQL to NoSQL, which means accessing NoSQL requires a different set of capabilities. But then if we were to look at some of the tools, for example, the one that we use is called Hive. And this essentially drastically accelerates ready-made access to big data, right? As opposed to, I mean, people would write SQL queries on the SQL database, on the normal database that you would use to maintain earlier. Now, with a tool like Hive, what you can do is you can carry on business as usual while the data shift has happened underneath. So those couple of examples. So just going kind of back and summarizing, we are seeing that there is a dramatic shift happening in terms of marketers' capabilities, in terms of being able to handle technology and data while essentially kind of owning the consumer behavior and consumer interaction function. And some of these tools have been very, very beneficial for them to do their day-to-day activities more effectively.
Thanks. Is there someone asking something? Can we keep questions for the later half, please? We'll now move on to Vivek, and I think like Chetan shared with us a lot of first-party data, etc. It will be interesting, Vivek, to understand from you about third-party data and those tools available to a lot of us, because a lot of us in our organizations might not be at a stage as yet where we are doing predictive modeling ourselves, or we've already implemented tools, and I think, but there is a lot of stuff available out there that some of us can definitely look at and make more intelligent decisions. So I think it'll be nice to hear from you on that.
Yeah, so I would like to take a little different take on this topic. I think we are now moved into a digital age. We're living in a digital age. The amount of data that we have access to, we've never had access to this kind of data before. So if you take, I sometimes joke around that Google is the closest man has ever come to creating a mind-reading machine. Because whatever you're typing on Google, that is what you're thinking in that moment of time. So, you know, they say Google is a database of intentions, then social media is sort of a database of actions. So if you know what the world is thinking, and if you know what the world is doing, it can give you a lot of actionable insights across your entire organization. So keeping that in mind, imagine the big data that is available publicly at this point in time to us. So whatever figures Chetan mentioned, you multiply that into 100 is the kind of public data that is available to us. And there could be very simple tools which some parts of our marketing function could be having easy access to, but it could be so relevant to the CEO and the CMO of the company. So let me give you an example. Let's say, if you just take a simple tool like Google Traffic Estimator tool. Everybody in this knows it. Search for it in Google, you get it. It tells you how many people are searching for what keyword every month and past trends for that keyword. So theoretically speaking, even if the CMO of the organization would put in 5 keywords, one of their brand name and 4 of their competitors, you just look at it every day and see what kind of trends are happening. Are the brand searches for their brand going up or down vis-a-vis competition? Kind of valuable insights you would get out of it. And you can make it region specific. So you can say, okay, my brand is going down in certain markets in the world or certain markets in India, while in other places is doing fine. Could be a simple tool as this. Let's say, suppose you want to identify a niche target audience that you want to reach out to, who's going to give you a lot of business. But you won't know how many people are there in that target audience. What if you go to the Facebook advertising modules, put in the interest that you want, put in the demographic, the male, age, etc. It tells you approximately how many of those people you can reach out to through Facebook. But then it tells you that, okay, if you want to target golf players in Mumbai, if Facebook is somewhat a surrogate for that audience, how many golf players are there in that city? So it's simple as that, that if you want to create content, what kind of content should you create? I think if you know what target audience you want to reach out to, putting a few words in some of these tools, like even Google Traffic Estimator tool, tells you what kind of content you should be creating. What should your marketing messaging be called? So if theoretically speaking, you're an NGO who is talking about quitting smoking, there could be a possibility that most people in India talk about stop smoking and not quit smoking, and a single wrong marketing message can be a failure or a success, depending on what keyword combinations you used. So what I've seen is that there are lots of big data that is available, which is public data, which are these tools in the cloud. And each of these tools can give you valuable insights across your endeavor, across your organization. It's not limited to the marketing function. Suppose you want to do product development. So what features should you put into your product? If you have a constraint, you can put only one of those two features. If the search trends for one of the features is going up exponentially, then that's the feature you should be putting in. And again, this data, how many of our product development teams in our companies even type these things in Google Traffic Estimator tools to know what products they should be developing? What are the key trends coming in? If you're a real estate builder and you want to make green buildings, and are more people getting more environmental conscious as compared to 5 years back? Maybe yes, maybe no. So all these tools, again, Google Insights, Google Trends, give you this data. So I think the key is that all this time, the key focus has been on looking at data which is individually available to us. And we thought as big, large companies, we have a huge competitive advantage because of the data. But I think the world we're moving in is going to be a lot about public data, which each of our competitors, however small or big, will have access to the same data. It is going to depend on organizations who sort of get that data analytics into the DNA of the organization across the various functions of the organization, how they can use it to get a competitive advantage. Because suddenly you have a level playing field. No company is small, no company is big. Everybody, it is a democratic environment. And I think the key is to build up the capabilities. And I've seen that in 15 years of doing digital advertising in India, companies that have used data to take an actionable insight and implement it are the ones that have leveraged digital the best. It's not the companies who had the most data or the most budgets. It is the companies who actually looked at data religiously. So I'll give you an example. I see the Lombard out here. Even 5 years back, Karthik, who was the then CMO, told us, I don't want any PowerPoint presentations. I want an Excel sheet. So there should be 20 Excel sheets, one slide, one Excel sheet with a pivot table. And that's how we're going to do our reviews every month. And 5 years back, he was investing 5 hours a month on digital advertising, which was unheard for a CMO in those days. And today, we see the digital marketing, I say Lombard, it is among the best and definitely leader in the industry. So it's just the amount of time and investments you do across the organization. It's not limited to the data that you have.
Thanks, Vivek. That's an interesting aspect. And Nitin's got a very, very interesting aspect to display advertising. And he has some interesting things to share there and how we can actually use data to get better ROIs and competitive advantages on display. So over to you, Nitin.
Thanks, Sumit. Before I talk about my perspective, can I have a quick show of hands on people that have either commissioned, bought, sold, or delivered display advertising in the room? Okay, good. So I'll talk about an application. Display advertising as it is done today requires big data. So let's dive into some numbers. So of course, this is the big number that everybody keeps on talking about, 100+ million users. Now there are 70 billion page views every month. Assuming that there are 3 ad impressions on most of those pages. That is 2.5 trillion ad impressions every year. And if you did a census of all the demand, people that do the advertising, every year 750 billion ad impressions, display ad impressions get bought. Now, we all know that Comscore, with due respect to them, they track about 70 to 80%, a representative set of internet in India. So when you have 3.5 trillion ad impressions available and demand to only satisfy 750 billion impressions, you have a massive demand-supply gap. So all of you who do display advertising, keep this in mind. If you don't target, there is no ROI. Display requires targeting, and unfortunately, display is highly fragmented today. So my affiliation, my company, Precision Match, focuses on delivering data for targeting display advertising better. And this is the business case for it. I think the corollary to the story, which some of the other members also alluded to, is fragmentation is here to rule. No one site, no one CRM, no one table, no one marker or beacon can tell everything about whether a user or a set of users will take an action or not. You have to integrate a lot of these signals and figure out what is trending well. So this is the big case for big data. You have to solve it. Display advertising, given how the canvas of display advertising is large, they are impactful ads, they create real value in terms of marketing. You have to solve this. So big data application to display advertising is a key part of the digital media landscape and the marketing landscape in the future. And my affiliation, like I said, Precision Match is a part of that. So thank you.
Interesting take from all of you, but I don't know, maybe some people in the audience have this question, but I definitely do have it. And as a consumer, and this whole talk about big data, small data, looking at various data points, targeting, retargeting our consumers. What about data privacy? It's a gray area. But I think it'll be interesting, any one of you who really wants to take a take on it, but what about this whole thing about worrying about, I gave my registration data to you, or I clicked on a certain thing and now you're using it to chase me all over. I don't know, there's a thin line, right? I mean, so you can service me better, definitely. But what is that line? It'll be interesting to.
So I think this has been a challenge always about finding a right balance. But my belief is that companies that are able to provide better value to the consumers by using their data, those are the companies that they don't face that many data privacy issues. So the key is that, let's say, when Gmail was launched, there was a big hue and cry that Google is reading the emails. But the fact of the matter was, it was done automated, it was improving the advertising the user would see. All of intent mapping, Google AdWords, is directly invasion of privacy, because based on what you're thinking, what you're typing in, I'm showing you an ad. But it improves the consumer behavior. And data privacy, the amount of data that is left on the non-advertising platforms, let's say we work with a lot of banks, they have data about your bank balance, about the credit card, about all the promotions they do, all the cross-selling, upselling they do. They have data analytic teams who look at individual data and they do marketing structured vis-a-vis you. So the data that you see where the advertiser uses the data to improve the whole advertising experience, that is something which is always going to be relevant. And I don't think that is a problem. And it happens even in the offline world, right? If you are getting out from a nice car, you're wearing a nice watch, you walk in, the person feels that the person can afford the luxury product you're selling, you're going to be treated differently from the other person who doesn't look that look. So the fact of the matter is, using data, whether which is in analytics format or in looking at a person, you always structure your sales pitch or advertising based on what you perceive. So I think that is a thin line. As long as I believe that it improves consumer experience, I think we should always make an attempt to improve that, and then we'll face lesser privacy issues.
A couple of more thoughts. I think data privacy, there are two aspects to it. Data privacy, where should the control lie? First of all, data privacy should be in the hands of the user. They should have control. They're either, if you're not going to give control to the user, all the intermediaries in the set of stakeholders, then the government is going to get into it. They will make it their business to control this. So there has to be an adequate amount of user opt-out. There has to be an adequate amount of user protection to make sure that there is complete clarity over how their data is being used. I think the second thing is about responsibility. If there is a brand that commissions an intermediary or a media company that abuses data, creates what's called, as if some of you have heard the term, creepy behavior, online creepy behavior. They are playing with fire. They're going to do things to their own brand so fast, and in this world of the, in this age of the highly interconnected consumers, they're playing with fire. They'll create a reputation that they'll have to then go out and manage.
John, you're kind of looking at marketeers and different markets around the globe, and we were having this interesting discussion on China versus Japan versus Sri Lanka and India. Maybe some words in you on what are you seeing as capabilities that a marketer should have today, or even on privacy if you want to because it will give us a good global perspective since you're looking at a lot of these markets and handling stuff.
Thank you. And there's so many aspects. We just touched on one here with data privacy. And Vivek was making the point about how he was behaving with one client 4 or 5 years ago. I was bringing to mind specifically this about capabilities. So please come to me and talk to me. Your example was with spreadsheets and pivot tables and so forth. But what it says to us is that analytics, as an example, is not something that a CMO or the marketer today has access to from elsewhere. It needs to become a core capability of a marketer of the future. So the terms of art and science of marketing is a reality also that needs to be reflected in the individual's capability. And the capabilities that you build functionally within your own organization and together with your network of partners. So I think in that respect, there's a huge change in capabilities in our industry. And the second thing I would say is the role in which a CMO, a marketing services company, a product manager is going to play in the future is also very much changing. The jobs and roles of the past are not the jobs and roles of the future. The expectation, and it's a little bit back to the point of privacy and authenticity that was just made, the point that an individual, and that individual may be a consumer or maybe a member of an enterprise, they are looking for a degree of service, experience, and authenticity, I'll use the word, of the brand or company they're working with. And this means that no longer do you think about things in the context of, service, sales, marketing, development, etc., that the entirety of a company, a public service, needs to be truly living the brand and service in its entirety. That brings a whole new skill set requirement and capability requirement to everybody in this room, and myself included. And the big data question is just something that it helps to accelerate that. Because the individual who is sharing their experiences is driving expectation thereafter that their actual service and experience is going to improve. So I give you data, I expect a return, and that's true for any individual. So huge opportunity, but honestly, also a risk for those that don't get on this mood. India is at a great point in time. You asked me to make a little comparison around the world. India is at a great point in time, and it has obviously got an enormously powerful economic and social position in the world already, and one that's growing and extending. In the world of, I think of marketing and analytics, as the point's been made once or twice, it's not yet as advanced as some markets elsewhere in the world. Most predominantly, you'd probably compare it to North America and some of the habits there. But also I would suggest that there are some other markets in Asia where we're seeing much more highly alert cognizance of application of analytics, actually penetration of instrumentation and capture of data, and the knowledge of how you might apply different cognitive techniques in terms of dealing with structured and unstructured data. So great positioning, but acceleration is what I would suggest to everybody.
With this, I think we'll open the floor to the audiences and we'll take your questions.